All right, here we go with two-part harmony. I've had a few cracks at doing this one. It's a little bit tricky because, there are rules and guidelines, and it's a bit of an art form rather than real rules. So anyway, we'll give it a shot. So the main rule there is in it is that once you start, oh my gosh, you can't stop. So your options for two-part harmony are thirds, well, that's horrible, sixths, or question mark. So question mark would be guide tones or counterpoint or something else, right? So we're going to focus on thirds and sixths. And once you start writing in thirds, you have to finish writing in thirds, blah, blah, blah. Same with sixths, same with whatever else you choose. So you can't pick and choose halfway through. All right, so let's get rid of that. Let's go and look at an example. So here we go. So what you've got to do really to start off is analyze what's happening. So in this excerpt, we're in what key signature? We're in F major. I just put that in because I know this is in F major. So we look at the melody and we go, is there anything in this melody that is outside of F major? The answer is no, not really. So we haven't got any notes we really have to worry about. Next, we might look at the chords. Are the chords all in F major? Well, not really, because this guy here should be a D minor, but it's actually a D7. So that's something we need to be aware of. It's not a big problem, but just something we need to be aware of, because really the harmony is going to sound right if it matches the chords. That's the main thing that's going on there. Next, we would look at strong, weak beats. So if you remember, we've got strong, weak, medium, weak as a bit of a guideline for beats. So on the strong beats, so like that one there, have we got a sensible note there? Yes, it's an A on an F major chord, so that makes sense. This over here, do we have a sensible note there? Yes, it's a C on an A minor, so that's sensible. So we just want to check that because that might influence how we do stuff. All right, and then we're going to look at some target notes. So when you're writing like a four-part harmony, you would write the main beats or the main target notes first. With a sixth and a third, it's obviously a bit simpler because you're just writing a third line or a sixth, so you could just write it out and hope for the best. But realistically, you want to make sure the last note really, really works. So if I put a third underneath here, does that work? The answer is yes, that would work. It would make a nice A minor. If I put a sixth underneath there, would that work? Yes, again, that would work. That would be quite nice. So if the song had finished on an A, like on the tonic, then a third is not going to work so well. If that makes sense, you'd have an F on an A minor chord or something like that. So I think almost always if it finishes on the tonic, you start having some issues with that thirds working very well. You have to think of some creative ways to get around it. Usually ending, anyway, something to think about. So for this example, which I prepared earlier, of course, which is going to work beautifully, it works for all the examples. So the other thing to think about is when we're targeting notes that this note here and this note here are relatively strong notes or target notes in this style of music. They're longer and they're syncopated, so they're quite important. So we'd have to make sure the notes work there. So thirds or sixths are going to work. So on this one here, a sixth down here doesn't work as well as a third because the E that I would have clashes with an F quite badly. Like you'd have a G minor 7 with the 13th in it, which is a weird combination, so we probably wouldn't do that. So because of that, I'm going to choose a third. So what we would do is we would simply write in the target note first, maybe as a reminder. Oops, I've made that so I can't undo it. And then we just write thirds underneath the whole thing. You could write your target notes in first, I guess. I wouldn't even worry about looking at whether this is going to work first. Just give it a good old-fashioned crack like this. Okay, and now that you've done that, I would go through and look at whether we need sharps and flats and naturals in this thing. So here we go. So we start back with our analysis. So that works, that works, that works. This doesn't work. Why doesn't that work? Because we've got a B flat in a D7 chord. And now the D7, which is different to what it should be, which is a D minor, is kind of suggesting that the composer or arranger wanted a slightly major sound there. And so because of that, the B flat gives it a minor sound. I kind of know that. You might have to play that to work that out yourself. So you would probably want to put in a natural sign here. That might help you give you a B. And you would probably also want to tell the piano player that, hey, now we're playing a D13. Let him know that that's what's going on. Otherwise, it doesn't really matter in this scenario, but it might be helpful. Then we keep going. So does this note work? Yes. Does this next note work? Yes, it does. It half works. I would say it works, even though there's a clash between the A and the B flat of the minor chord. It's really, this here is kind of making it like a G minor 11, but minor chords tend to be far more forgiving than other chords, so that's the reason it kind of works for this one here. So what do we do? Tick, tick. Okay, now this one here is should have some alarm bells going off, because we have a C7 which has got an E in it, and we're trying to do a harmony of an F. So our options are either to not do the F and put an E in, or what we could do is, because I happen to know that this makes a nice sus chord, I can just change the chords to C sus 7 and then C7 like that. Well, it's hard to read, isn't it? But this is a real classic progression, like C sus, C7, and then to your the end of the cadence as such, or the last chord makes a really nice sound. So I would leave it exactly like that, and that's going to sound good. So we covered a lot of territory there, but essentially what we're going to do, the steps would be read the question, make sure you're reading the question and doing what it's asking you to do. Then you do some analysis, work out what the last note needs to be. That's usually a good guide, whether a sixth or a thirds is the best option for that moment. Make sure you stay with one. If you chose thirds, you've got to stay with thirds. If you chose sixth, you've got to do sixth. And then once you've written it in, go back and double check the chords, make sure there's no weird notes going on, because there will be weird notes. You won't just be able to write in the third underneath and get it right. There'll be things you'll need to alter to make it sound right. Okay, great. See you soon.